Well, hello, all you happy people. It is August 23rd. It is insanely hot. Last time I looked, it was 101 here, and it is currently still 101. No, that's never going to work. Yeah, it's 101. It is hot. But we got lots to talk about, and I didn't want to skip a show because of heat. When we've got lanterns, we've got the People versus Gorilla Grodd announcement to talk about. We've got I've Ed. I finished Batman: The Caped Crusader season 2. We've got a bunch of footage coming out about the Batman Part 2. I mean, there's a ton of stuff to talk about. And that's not even getting into some of the things like the Vision Quest trailer that came out last weekend. Um, it's been pretty interesting. Let's talk a little bit about Marvel first. I haven't talked a lot about Marvel lately, and I think that's because they haven't really been making. They make news, but not consistently. A lot of it has been cancellations of stuff or reported cancellations. It never comes from Marvel. It's always this insider says and that insider says, and it's like, how true is this stuff? Mr. Nope, good evening. So I always take those announcements with a grain of salt. Um, so many things have been announced dead. The Batman Part 2 was announced dead. Um, I think Supergirl got announced as being dead one time. Um, the Jimmy Olsen show, people said, oh, that's not happening. And you know my attitude about that. I think a lot of these scoopers are either not vetting their sources or just making stuff up so people will click and they'll get their money. Um, you don't have to worry about that with me because I'm really bad at this. I don't have a lot of followers. I don't have a lot of views. I'm not making any money off of this show yet. So I, you know, if I'm telling you something because I really believe it's true, or at least, or I believe the source. All right. Um, so Wonder Man got canceled, and I guess the Blade movie got canceled, and that's not necessarily true. I don't think Blade got canceled. I think it got to a point where Mahershala Ali is no longer hanging around. So I think if they do move forward with Midnight Suns, they're going to need Blade. And as good as Mahershala Ali is, they can find other actors. Now, is that a missed opportunity? Of course. He's a great actor, and I'd love to have seen him as a Blade. But they got to get their stuff together. I mean, I think a lot of Marvel's problem is that after Endgame, Disney really kind of changed, and a lot of it was because of Bob Iger stepping down and Bob Chapek taking over, and there was this call for quantity over quality. They wanted stuff for Disney Plus, and they wanted stuff in the theaters as quickly as possible, and I think that really hurt Marvel. And they really didn't have the structure in place to do it. They didn't. They did TV shows like they were movies, just broken over 6 parts, 8 parts, and that doesn't really work. And you see it with DC is that they're getting real TV show runners when they do their shows. You know, James Gunn did Peacemaker. Um, Liz Frank, I don't remember her name, but did the Penguin, and now Mundy, Lindelof, and Tom King are doing Lanterns. And of course, we just got the announcement for the People versus Gorilla Grodd. And again, they hired people who know how to make television, and I think that's the key. Marvel was trying to do things a different way, and I don't think it worked out. And they ended up, some of the shows were great. Some of them were good. I mean, there was some problems with Secret Invasion, and I'm not a fan of Thor Ragnarok, but I don't think any of the stuff that came out was horrible. Hey, Thomas, good to see you. Yeah, well, Thor Ragnarok was pretty bad. But Miss Marvel was fun. I liked She-Hulk. But I think a lot of people's problem with She-Hulk is that it's very different from everything else at Marvel. But if you ever read the old She-Hulk comic, everything was different. It was a very different thing. She used to break the fourth wall before Deadpool ever did. So I think that's part of the problem, is that people have this mindset. They think superheroes are a genre, and they think that they should all fit in this mold. And if you grew up reading comics, you know that comics could vary greatly from one title to the next. I mean, you'd have the Justice League by J.M. DeMatteis and Keith Giffen and all them, and had Batman in it and Guy Gardner and stuff like that. But it was funny. It was an action comic, but it was funny. And then you'd go over and see Batman on his own. It was much darker. And then you go pick up like Arkham Asylum, and that was borderline horror, or stuff like that. So as a comic reader, we know that just because it's a comic or a superhero story, it doesn't have to be in the same mold. Like, the Batman by Matt Reeves is very different from the Superman by James Gunn. You can enjoy both of them. You can watch both of them, but their tones are very different. And it doesn't mean that one tone is better than the other, or one tone is what a superhero story should be and the other one isn't. Superman was trying to kind of a more straightforward action adventures story, while the Batman was a noir detective story. Lanterns, they've said from the beginning, this is going to be a true detective thing. It's not going to be, it's going to have the Green Lantern elements in it. But whenever somebody says that, well, it doesn't feel like a superhero story, all I do is I look and say, well, what about cop stories? You've got Training Day, very much a cop story. But then you have Police Academy, also a cop story. Those are very different. Look at The Rookie on TV, and then Bosch, different. It's just because they're all cops doesn't mean it's going to be the same story told. And I think that's the key in what's going on with superhero stories. And Gunn is embracing that a lot when you look at the slate of stuff that DC Studios is doing, where Marvel has tried to step out and got real dinged up by it. I think DC, the expectations on DC are lower. With the way films ended, the way things ended with the DCEU, and that period of 4 movies that the studio was done with, but still had to put out. Shazam 2, Aquaman 2, Blue Beetle, and The Flash. I think people got burned, so they don't expect DC to be good. And when something comes along like Superman and it's really good, then people are like, oh, hey, that's great. Or Lanterns comes along. You'll notice that the people who like Lanterns are a lot of people who this is new to them, where the people who are complaining are old school comic book readers and Snyder Bros. They always complain. But the old school comic readers, they're like, how do you do Hal dirty like that? And you got to remember, this is not the first time Hal died. In the comics, he died before, and in much worse situations. And there was a movement to bring him back. There was an actual group, I think it was called Heat, was what it was. So, it's funny how, in a lot of ways, Green Lantern has been the driving force for so much change in the comic industry, but in ways that were unexpected. Well, I mean, Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams doing, adding Green Arrow and taking on like issues of race and drug abuse and stuff like that. That changed a lot of stuff. The fact that they did a drug cover really shook up the industry. And to have DC come out and go, well, we're still publishing this book without the Comic Code Authority on it. But DC, I mean, Green Lantern's also to create such a movement to bring Hal Jordan back. And then there's also the whole fridging thing that pretty much was how Gail Simone became, a name. And then, once she got to be a chance to write, people realized how good she was. But what got her on the map, a lot of it was, her articles about how a female character was only used and killed to move forward a male story. Andrew says the Bwahaha Justice League was the first comic series I collected, right along with the Punisher. Yeah, see, they're right there. Very different books. I mean, I don't think you could go more extreme, unless you're talking about maybe Faust, Grips, something purely adult and murderous compared to the Bwahaha Justice League. So I see just a couple things that irked me. There's a lot of coverage about the Lanterns show. And we're going to talk about Lanterns in just a second. But some of the things I saw, one was, it's a good show, but it's not a good Green Lantern show. And I think that's BS. Because nobody knows what a good Green Lantern show is. Because there hasn't been one. We've had a mediocre to bad Green Lantern movie. We had a decent Green Lantern animated series. But who's to say what a good Green Lantern TV show is? Now, would anybody complain about this in a comic? Because we know there's going to be a bunch of other comics. We could accept that, this Green Lantern story takes place on Earth. And it's going to be more of a earthbound one. But when it comes to TV and movies, because they're limited, I think a lot of people like, no, I wanted to have all this in it. I wanted to have all the different ring cores and the emotional spectrum and all that. But the truth is that those are things that were built up to in the comics. It's hard to just jump into those things. You kind of have to build up. And the first thing you got to do is shake off the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern. For a lot of people, that was their only experience with Green Lantern. Also, a lot of people are like, Hal's the first and best Green Lantern. They should focus on him. You know what? For a lot of people, their first Green Lantern is John Stewart, because their introduction to DC was the Justice League animated series. It wasn't Hal Jordan. It wasn't Kyle Rayner. It wasn't Guy Gardner or any of these other ones. It was John Stewart. So the fact that we're getting a series that has Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart and Guy Gardner, that's phenomenal. Did you really think that we would get the first Green Lantern thing after the 2011 movie would have all three of them in it? With this, that should be celebrated, not, oh, we need to get Kyle in it, or oh, we need to get these other things happening, and oh no, you can't kill off Hal. We're not even sure Hal's dead. Let's be honest. Okay, they just minutes before the thing, Hal asked John how many species can mimic being human, and it was 14. So the fact that they've made that clear makes you think that maybe Hal's not dead. You know, who knows? But we wait and we watch the show. And there was so much good in that show. So many good things. Before I get into that, though, let me catch up here. Krypton. Hey, Krypton. Good to see you, man. Hey, no worries, man. Good to see you. Some people are just complaining that isn't a Green Lantern show. I mean, I give it time. Yeah, they need to give it time to grow. Think how faked his death. Yeah. See, that's a theory. Now, I'm not. Ever since WandaVision came out, theories have run rampant, and it's fun to theorize. But if you get to the point where the theories become more important than the show, and if the show doesn't do what the theories are, then you get upset and don't like the show. You're not writing the show. You can have a great theory. And hey, you might be right. But you might also be wrong, and doesn't mean the show is bad. I'm a Carolina Panther fan. I have seen them in 2 Super Bowls. Were those Super Bowls bad because they lost? I would love to have seen them win. But their first Super Bowl against the New England Patriots was a barn burner. That is considered one of the best Super Bowls of all time. That the Patriots got ahead and the Panthers came back and made it close. So, you can have your theories, and I love having theories too. I've got my own. But don't get so connected to them that you don't enjoy the show if it's not what they do. I'm sorry, Ed. You may not know what a Super Bowl is, but you do know what it's like to have ungodly players. You had Barry Sanders and you had Megatron. Come on. Also, wasn't there a guy named Cloyce Box or something on your team? There's another really good receiver in the past. And you have Matthew Stafford. So, I mean, I'm a Panther fan, and we haven't had the best of luck. But we got there and lost twice. So, is it better to have Super Bowled and lost, or never to have Super Bowled at all? All right, so back to Lanterns. Some of the things I absolutely loved about the show, and I'm going to try to do it without spoilers, but the interaction between Hal and John. Kyle Chandler is an amazing Hal Jordan. And Aaron Pierre is perfect as Jon Stewart. My favorite scene is when they've just left the barbecue. And the host will, I can't remember the last name. Oh, I have it right here. Will Mason talks about the tofu steaks or tofu burgers, whatever he made, and asked if they were okay, and then said, yeah, there's nothing like eating off another man's grill. And we all knew what he was talking about. It was obvious. And even John got it. And Hal's like, what the hell was that? And how that scene played out, the way John admitted what happened and Hal's reaction, it was almost an attaboy. And if you think about it, that's probably the first attaboy he had ever given John. And that to me was such a good scene showing the relationship between those two characters. I can't look at Kyle and not see Don Johnson at Miami Vice. All right. It's funny. Everybody keeps making references to Friday Night Lights. But for me, I know Kyle Chandler from a very old TV show called Early Edition. And that's what I always go back to. But yeah, I think the casting on this show has been absolutely great. When the little kid called out his grandmother and John realized who it was, that was another great moment. The jukebox scene, my only thought on that is, why did they not just use What's New, Pussycat? We all know they were borrowing the John Mulaney reference. And it was perfect. And maybe Tom Jones's estate, didn't want, was too expensive. But come on. How great would that be to that, wah, 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 what's new, pussycat? Whoa, whoa. How great would that have been in that scene? You have to pay to get play music in a show. Yeah, he does come across like John Johnson. And I agree with you, Krypton. I like his Midwestern accent. By the way, Krypton, did you watch the TV show Krypton and made the connection that Aaron Pierre was on that show as well? So yeah, all that stuff I thought was great. The interrogation scene was chef's kiss. And just overall, I absolutely loved the episode. I really am impressed because I thought, okay, this needs to be good, but I guess and I'm doing the same thing everybody else is doing. I'm lowering the bar for DC. And they just went right over. Not a problem. 69-yard field goal by the Kansas City Chiefs. I watched some football this weekend. Sorry about all the football references. But Law and Order G. Green Lantern Corps. Yes. That would be perfect. Law and Order OA. And then the line about as a Nebraskan native, that is the breadth and depth of your opinion about Barack Hussein Obama. Perfect. Just so perfect. And I like how they tied it into Hal getting the ring, because you're sitting there going, why does this little town mean so much? What does this town have to do with Hal? Well, they made the connection right there. And the thing is, in the comics, they never said where Abin Sur had crash landed. So, yeah. I thought that was just spectacular. We're an hour and a half away from the next episode, and I will be watching it as soon as it starts. I am all in on this series. Do I think Hal's dead? I'm kind of leaning to no, because the way the creators are talking about it. But it kind of feels like they're wanting us to believe he's dead. So, well, hey, Za Worldstar, first thing, welcome. I don't remember seeing your name in chat before, but please, welcome. Hope you stay around. And would you like the question noir style detective story limited series? I love the question, the noir style. I write noir style. I don't have the. I have a series of novels I write called Lucius Fogg, and they're a noir detective series set in a 1950s New York where the supernatural is everywhere. So yeah, I am down for noir fiction. So again, they're doing everything to make this series for me in a way. It's like, hey Dan, here's your show. I would kill for Vic Sage the question. See, yeah, I want to see the questions so bad, and the questions on my list of characters I want to write. So, yeah, except for Uncle Ben. What's funny is that there used to be 3. Actually, there used to be 4. Uncle Ben, Bucky, Jason Todd, the original Captain Marvel. And 3 of those 4 have been brought back. So hopefully Marvel will never break the 4th one. I saw somebody asking, saying, wouldn't it have been better to do this show with someone like The Question? Or maybe somebody from the Bat family? And I say no, absolutely not. And the reason is because I think this as a hybrid show has so much more potential. Hey, Kat, good to see you. Because every time they're doing the True Detective show and they're getting the people to watch it for that, but then they're adding the supernatural elements. In a lot of ways, it's why The Penguin was so good, because The Penguin did a Sopranos-like gangster show, but had hooks into Gotham and just little touches into Batman. Now, not as much. This one, I think, will have more. So, we get a couple things. He makes a $20 bill, a bubble wrap. They make a church key, a bottle opener, those kind of things. That shows you how old I am. I call them church keys still. So it starts to build up the cosmic side and the whole talk about aliens. So for somebody who doesn't know anything about Green Lanterns, we got an introduction to the powers without slamming them over the head with giant constructs and big flashy battles. We got them hooked for the murder mysteries, whatever happened in 2016, and then in 2026. So it's the people who want to watch mystery stuff, they're hooked now. And we can start bringing them in with more and more like, oh, Hal's going to go visit this guy Sinestro on another planet. Yeah, he's just in interviewing a possible son. It's kind of like Hannibal Lecter. So Hannibal, right? You're good with Hannibal Lecter being the criminal that they get advice from. Well, we're going to have that too. So just come on in. It's good. It's good. And by the end of the series, we're going to get more and more of the cosmic scope. But it's going to bring the viewers 9.3 million viewers in 3 days. The Penguin took 11 days to get to, was it 10.4 million or something like that? So by now, it's Green Lanterns is probably already well over that in a lot less days. It's one of their top shows in their history. It's like in the top 5, I think it is. Lanterns, a show about Green Lantern. So I think the people who want exactly what are in the comics have to realize that the audiences are different. You know, if they just made shows for the people who read comics, you're not talking about that many people. 100,000 maybe. You know, I mean, if you add in people who have stopped reading, but I mean, single issue comics don't sell much anymore. There's not 1 million people buying comics anymore. So, yeah, Mr. A is Ditko's version of the question when he left DC. And he makes the question seem liberal. Mr. A is very much based on Ayn Rand's principle of individualism. So he's a very interesting character. So, all right. So, yeah, that's why I'm loving what Lanterns is doing. Is I love comics. I've read comics since I was 5 when I got my first comic book. I've been a dedicated collector, and then meeting Jack Kirby when I was 10 or 11 changed my life. I wanted to be in this industry. I want this industry to thrive and grow. And I know that, yes, there are stories I'd love to see on the big screen, but they need to make stories that are going to get a lot of people. Because if you make just a story that only gets a handful of people, there won't be a second one. Look at Bloodshot. Bloodshot had Vin Diesel in the lead. It had Eliza Gonzalez. It had Sam Worthington? No. The guy from Outlander. And it had Guy Pearce. It came out right before the pandemic. I mean, literally like the week before everything shut down. It hit theaters. It's not a great movie, but it's a good movie. I enjoyed it. I thought I saw the potential to build a Valiant universe. The problem was nobody saw it. The timing and the fact that, you know, they didn't really put the money into advertising because everything was falling apart. What was my first comic? It was Captain America 190 something. I know it. I have a picture of it on my phone, but I always have to go way back to find it. My Uncle Dave used to come out and visit, and every time he'd come visit, he'd have toys for my brother and I. And he suddenly came out on a business trip and didn't have a lot of time, was only going to come over for lunch, didn't have time to go to a toy store to buy anything for us. It's Captain America 189. You guys probably can't see this. Yeah, it's way too glary. Captain America 189. And so he stopped at 7-Eleven, bought 2 comic books and brought them. Gave one to me, Captain America 189, and gave one to my brother, a Nick Fury comic. My brother said, thank you very much, was happy. My Uncle Dave left, and suddenly I had 2 comics because my brother didn't think reading was fun. And I just took off from there. To me, comics were the greatest thing ever. By the way, it's kind of a neat story. I do a lot of work with Dynamite Entertainment and Dynamic Forces. Nick Barucci, who is a good friend and someone I work with a lot, he owns the cover to Captain America 189. And someday I'm going to try to buy it off of him. So, all right. So yeah, absolutely loved Lanterns. I thought it was a great first episode. I think it's great potential. Now, if they can just keep it going, because I remember the first season of True Detective and how good that was. So, thank you, Zah. All right, so let's move on. I got some other things I want to cover, but if you guys have any other comments about Lantern, go ahead and throw them in the chat. By the way, I'd appreciate if you could hit the thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. All that stuff. I never remember to do that, so the fact I remember is kind of cool. So, what else? I wanted to talk about The People versus Gorilla Grodd. That is the new series. Well, we've been hearing about a Jimmy Olsen series, and then we started hearing that it was going to have Gorilla Grodd, and that it was going to be this kind of true crime thing. And I had a hard time getting that in my head. And then the other day they made the announcement, and there was a Daily Bugle story that they put out to do with it, and how, the basis is that Gorilla Grodd was part of the murder trial of the century in Metropolis, that in 2021 he was on trial, found guilty for patricide, killing his father, who's the king of Gorilla City. Now, I'm assuming this took place in Metropolis because Gorilla City doesn't have a law system, or it's questionable where the jurisdiction was, or there's going to be something where they moved the trial because he wouldn't be able to get a fair jury. I don't know. Because I don't think they're going to have the murder take place in Metropolis. But, okay, Andrew, this is what I was. It was like, maybe, but it's not James Gunn. Who it is, and let me get their names right. It is Dan Perrault and Tony Yacinda. Now, these two guys did a show back in 2017 called American Vandal. American Vandal is a half-hour comedy mockumentary of a true crime show. They're doing it again, basically. Now, I was curious because season 1 of American Vandal had not only those two gentlemen who are the showrunners, but it also starred Jimmy Tatro, who is going to be Gorilla Grodd, Dan Perrault, who's the co-creator of the show, is going to be in it, and there's one other actor who I can't think of his name right now, but he's going to be in it as well. So 3 of the actors from this show are going to be in The People versus Gorilla Grodd. Hey, Pete, good to see you, man. Nope, Batman stuff's coming at the end. So we did the Lantern stuff first. What are your thoughts on The People versus Gorilla Grodd? I say, okay, that's what we're doing. People versus Gorilla Grodd. So I sat down yesterday and I thought, I will watch the first episode of American Vandal to get an idea of what these guys are going to do. Because it's so odd that basically the format they're going to do with this new DC show, they'd already done with 3 of the cast members and the same showrunners. What I found is it's a show about a kid who is Jimmy Tatro played the main kid. He's, a troublemaker. He's kind of a loser. He's not well loved. Teachers hate him. He's a disruption. And somebody goes through the faculty parking lot and spray paints penises on 27 of the vehicles. And they delete the footage of the staff parking lot on the security cameras. And of course, he gets in trouble, he gets expelled. One of the guys he knows from film class, or whatever it is, decides that he doesn't think it's necessarily the right decision, and he starts doing this documentary, trying to put together the real pieces and figure it out. Overall, there's silliness, there's some crudeness, but it is filmed with such sincerity. It is made. No. American Vandal's real. It's on Netflix. There's 2 seasons. I've only watched the first one. It is filmed with such sincerity that it really feels like a true crime story. And while it's this absolutely absurd event that they're covering, they do such a good job of presenting the situation and the characters that at the end of the first episode, I'm like, now I want to know who did it. I need to know who drew the dicks. And some of the evidence that they present is like a different, this guy used to draw them in school, like on the whiteboards and stuff, but the way he did it was a little different. It was more missiles tipped instead of mushroom tipped. And there was hair on the testicles instead of clean shaven. And there was a different, and this is the type of stuff that they're presenting as the evidence. But as you're watching it, it has that true crime feel. So, yeah, that's the thing, is that it's this absolutely absurd comedy, but it's done with such sincerity and heart. And there gets to a point where you really feel for these characters, which is amazing. So I was impressed with season 1, and I watched all 8 episodes in a day. They're half hours, so it wasn't that big a commitment, but, I was, we got to the end, and I'm like, I feel good about this show now. I feel good about The People versus Gorilla Grodd, because I think the guy playing Grodd is good. I think he can really pull it off. I have good faith in these writers, and the fact that you get the staff from the Daily Planet. So we're going to get Wendell Pierce and Michaela Hoover and Beck Bennett and Skylar Gizmondo. We're getting the people that we know from Superman. We're getting some other really good actors. I'm looking forward to this now. And there's a comment from Za about Flash. I don't know if we'll get introduced to the new Flash or the current Flash, but I think what we may get is hints at the Flash. Now, the fact that he's a speedster, we could totally get red flashes and stuff when Grodd gets captured. And we could establish that Flash is in the universe without having to introduce the actor. We could just build up on that, set it up. And I think in a lot of ways that would be helpful, because again, the other Flash movie that didn't do well isn't that old. Green Lantern came out 15 years ago and they're still getting over that. So I think kind of teasing us with the Flash in almost like a Jaws thing, where we see him in the background, we get glimpses of him in footage, but we never get him on camera, could really work to help reestablish the character. Now, the other way they could do it is they could introduce a Flash, and it could be Barry Allen. and then an older Barry Allen. And then when it's time to bring him into the modern day, we end up with Wally West. That's possible. Because I don't necessarily, I think that's another possibility. Not saying that's what it's going to do. I think they'll just hint at it, but we'll see. So if you guys are worried about this, I'm not. I think it's a good way to build up to the Flash. And I think that's really what the show's about, is setting up the Flash to return and kind of erase the idea of what we had without getting people to go, oh, it's the Flash. Oh, well, we saw the Flash. It was horrible. Or the other option is, well, the Flash is Grant Gustin. We want that guy back. They don't have to do any of that. They can just introduce the idea of the Flash and get it established in the universe and then bring him in later on. So I think that may be what they do. Also, like I said, I love the fact that it's back in 2021. I like that we're filling in all the years prior to Superman appearing. That we're getting this universe filling of post stuff, because we can build the timeline better and better. So, they have Hal and Barry have some adventures in late 80s, early. Yeah. I mean, they could do that. They could establish that set of characters and then the newer ones to go with a younger Superman, a younger Batman. That's one way they could do it. And we got to keep in mind that there's so many DC characters that people want to see, and so many legacy characters, that it would be impossible to introduce all of them. But we could hint at them. I just rewatched over the weekend The Blue Beetle. Lisa hadn't seen it yet. And of the 4 movies they did at the end, 5 if you count Black Adam, I think Blue Beetle was the best. I think it had the most salvageable material, and I think that's why they're doing it. So from that point of view, I did enjoy that movie. Like I said, it definitely was the best of that lot. But you have the Ted Kord Blue Beetle in there as well. So you've got that era of superheroes as well. So that's something we never got in Marvel. Marvel, we got the beginning of everything. Now we can fall into the existing DC universe and see the past and see the future and stuff like that. So I think that's fascinating. And if they do that, where we get some older characters that kind of round it out, and we get Ted Kord and we get Hal Jordan and Barry Allen, but then moving forward, we get Wally West and John Stewart and Jaime Reyes, I'm okay with that, because it's paying homage to what the older guys want, but also bringing in the modern day viewers. So, yeah, Booster would be good too. I don't know. I think maybe they want a modern day Booster, but don't know. But yeah, we definitely need some Ted and Booster action. So yeah, I have a lot of faith in the upcoming People versus Gorilla Grodd. All right, let's switch over to Batman. 2 things I wanted to talk about. First was Batman the Caped Crusader. That's animated series on Prime. I really liked the first season. I enjoyed the second season, but I didn't like it as much because they made a lot of really weird decisions on characters. And in a way, you really have to look at it as an Elseworld, because it's not the DC stories we know. The Joker isn't a maniacal laugher. The Riddler doesn't do riddles. He riddles people with bullets. Mr. Zero instead of Mr. Freeze. They kill Two-Face in season 1. It's just a very different series. A different set of stories. And Yeah, it's fun to watch, but don't expect it to be the DC universe we're used to. So, yeah. Sorry, guys. It is still really hot here. So, all right. So let's talk about the Batman. Now, we have been seeing some great footage online, and most of it isn't spoiler stuff. We know this is going to take place in winter, and we're seeing a lot of footage of the Batmobile in the snow and being chased by GCPD cops in cars and stuff, in one in a SWAT tank. So that's really cool. I love that they're moving forward with the filming. I know the other day there was a picture of a woman sitting in the passenger seat of the car. I don't know what that's about. I know a lot of people are speculating, well, that must be Scarlett Johansson's character. No, I wouldn't make that jump. And if you look inside the Batmobile, there's no second seat, but maybe canonically he's supposed to have a second seat. But yeah, that's. I think the footage is looking really good. And when you see footage like that, it again gets me excited for the show coming back because I absolutely love the first Batman. I wanted to talk a little bit about Sebastian Stan and his comment where he said he was playing Harvey Dent, and then suddenly that got retracted. You have to remember that was translated from, I think, French or Spanish. So it sounded funny. It sounded like, it almost sounded like sarcasm. Like, he's like, yeah, you know, where I'm playing Harvey Dent. Like, yeah, everybody assumes I'm playing Harvey Dent. So the fact that it was retracted, I still don't buy the rumors. You know, do I think he could play Harvey Dent? That would make a lot of sense. Do I think he's playing Victor Zsasz? That seems like such a small character. You know, it's the type that would fit in the Matt Reeves universe, but it's a small character. Well, there's a lot of speculation on why it took more than 6 years between movies. I don't think it'll be that long between 2 and 3. And I think it'll end with 3 because I think that's what Matt Reeves wanted to do. But will we get another series? I don't necessarily want a second Penguin season because I think the first season was perfect. I would love to see a series that focuses on a different villain. I know there was talk about a Catwoman series, which would have been great. If they introduce Harvey Dent in this season, but don't turn him into Two-Face, and then do that in a TV series, like the Trial of Penguin, or and maybe they get Christina Falcone's daughter in it. Maybe she throws the acid in his face since Falcone's gone. It wasn't Falcone that did it. It was the other gangster who's dead, Maroney. But you get the idea. So I would love to see them do like a legal series with Harvey Dent that's in the Batman universe, something like that. So I would love to get a series in between. But yeah, I don't want them to go 6 years again. So hopefully we'll get 2, and then we'll get 3 right after. I think when they start filming with more characters, we'll get a better idea. But I think they want to keep it under wraps as long as possible. But eventually we all found out, you know, we found out that, you know, about the Riddler and the Penguin and Falcone and Maroon, you know, all that stuff. So I think we'll find out. All right, guys. Any questions you guys have? Let's see. The Batman is my favorite. The Batman movie, and love the muscle car. Yeah, I love the muscle car Batman. It was the first movie that really felt like Batman. It it's the first movie that I saw that portrayed Batman the way I like Batman. But then my favorite Batman series are Hush, The Long Halloween, Dark Victory, where Batman is the detective. And it's got a lot of the villains and stuff like that. And that's what that was to me. You know, these other ones, I enjoy them. I thought Bale was a good Batman. I liked Ben Affleck as Batman, though I didn't like the movies they were in. This is the one that clicks the most for me as well. So, yeah, when that thing started up, it was like, oh, somebody summoned a demon from hell. You know, Cerebus is here. And then that car comes out and that chase. I actually have multiple versions of that Batmobile. I have the Matchbox version. I have a 1/32nd scale version. And I have the Bandai guys that do like these models, snap together models. I have that, but it didn't come as well as I'd hoped. But it's like, I want to find a 1/32nd scale purple Maserati Quattro, which is Penguin's car, so I can set them up like it's that chase. But I can't find the other car. So, yep, even at 56, I nerd out. But then we all do, right? That's kind of why we love this industry. So, all right, guys, I think I'm going to wrap that up here. Again, it's hot, but I thank you all for coming. Get ready for lanterns tonight. I will be back next week to talk about lanterns and anything else that comes up during the week. If you have any topics you want me to cover, if anything comes up in lanterns that you're like, what the hell is that? Go ahead and hit me up on social media. It's Dan Wickline just about everywhere, or Dan Wick 70, and let me know, and I will try to cover it next week. So, Reacher, we'll definitely get to Reacher next week. Absolutely loving the new season of Reacher. So, all right, guys. Again, thank you for coming in. Thank you to the new guys. Za, great having you here. Kat, Thomas, Mr. Nope, all you guys, Andrew, of course, and Ed. You guys are all awesome. Thank you very much. And I'll see you next week. Have fun and be safe.